Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Social Club at the End of the World. I'm happy to be joined by Adam in the state of Washington, Jason in Southern California, and Miles way up in Alberta, Canada. Welcome, gentlemen. Good morning. Great to see you all. How y'all doing?
Great, Jamin. Thank you.
Doing well. Hello from the land of snow and ice.
Hey, Jamin.
Hey, Jason. Great to see you all. I know we'll be joined by Michael in France in a few minutes here. So let's talk about, let's just kind of talk about what our objectives and goals are, both for this session and for the Social Club at the End of the World. My goal is that we develop and implement well, first of all, actually, before I get into that, let me just state this video conference is totally public, totally open. Anyone can join. If you want to find the link to be able to join and be one of us happy, smiling faces on the live and broadcast and recorded video conference, you can find the link either on my Facebook page, my Google Plus page, or on a video that I update on this very YouTube channel called Instructions for How to Join a Hangout. So you just click on the link and kapoof, you'll be here with us all sharing. Okay, with that said, I know, Miles, did you want to say something in the realm of legal disclaimer or anything, or did you want to hold off on that for the moment? Up to you.
Yeah, I'll make a quick statement. If everybody's in agreement with it, they can give a thumbs up. But essentially, for everybody who's joining the conversation now or in the future, that this is an oral conversation. It's for the purpose of discussion only, to share opinions and to encourage each other. Any suggestion that anything stated constitutes a legally binding contract is expressly disclaimed. So, just that we've got a lot of ideas going back and forth, and it's really a public Creative Commons. Thank you.
All righty. Good stuff. I certainly agree. So I would like to propose that the goal, the objective of this forum, this meeting and this forum generally, be that we explore and ultimately achieve consensus on, if that's possible, and why not, what set of actions we can take to actually begin to change the course of planet Earth, of life on Earth. Right now, it's very clear we are in a death spiral, an extremely severe death spiral. And there are a lot of thoughts and a lot of ideas and a lot of explanations as to how we got into this death spiral, how we stay in the death spiral, where the death spiral is taking us, and how soon we expect us to get there, where it's taking us. And I posit that while those can be very interesting conversations, given that we are so close to what appears to be the end of life on Earth, that we be very intentional and even disciplined in pursuing what set of actions will take us on a path to actually changing course. And when I say changing course, we can talk about what that means. It can mean preventing the degree of abrupt climate change that is predicted. It can mean taking steps to preserve life, to preserve as much of the diversity of life on Earth as possible, even if and when the temperatures spike and shoot up to another 10 degrees centigrade above where we're at currently. It can mean a lot of things, but what characterizes all of them is that we are looking to preserve as much of life on Earth as possible and to essentially decontaminate from planet Earth as much as possible those things which threaten life, such as nuclear power plants, nuclear missiles, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, et cetera, et cetera. And so just to make it concrete, one of the things that I think is absolutely the most urgent is the refreezing of the Arctic ice. The preservation of what Arctic ice is still remains, and refreezing of Arctic ice so that we have plenty more of it, so that it performs its vital set of functions for preserving life on Earth, notably two of them. Number one, reflecting away sunlight, which hits the Arctic region, particularly in the summer months. And secondly, providing that bank account of ice to absorb heat as excess heat makes its way up to the Arctic region in the form of warm ocean currents. And we need both of those functions, absolutely critical to life on Earth. And we lose both of those if we lose the Arctic. To quote the president of Finland, stating to Donald Trump a couple of months ago, if we lose the Arctic, we lose the planet. So that is so for me, one of the most urgent goals is that we refreeze the Arctic by this summer. And I know that's a very tall objective, but if we don't do that, then I think we're going to be in rapidly accelerating heating and dying on planet Earth. So that's one of the things that needs to happen urgently. There are a lot of other things that need to happen urgently that it may be the top of the list. But anyway, those are my opening thoughts, and I'm going to go on mute to hear everyone's thoughts on what should the objectives be, what should the goals be of the social club at the end of the world. And everyone's opinion is valid here, so please just speak your mind, speak your heart. I'm going on mute.
Well, I'll jump in since I got in there first. I agree. I think that the Arctic, I was kind of thinking about this and breaking it down in my head, that there's sort of surface level objectives possibly. And there's then deeper levels of things. So we've heard Adam talking a lot about money. I think that maybe would fall into a deeper category, sort of along cultural lines. Hey, Michael.
Michael, welcome. We're getting an echo from you. Welcome to the social club at the end of the world. Michael's joining us from France. And Jason's in the middle of saying something interesting. Back to you, Jason.
So just that there's surface things and there's deeper like objectives or things that need to be done, goals. And I think sort of talking about cultural, us being in kind of the capitalist culture, the consumer culture, that sort of needing to definitely be changed if we're going to face the amount of waste that we just dump into our environment. So those are sort of deeper ideas, but on a surface level, if we wanted to keep this to a surface level thing, I think it could be good to focus on refreezing the Arctic. And how's that? Other things that would fit on that surface level thing would, in my mind, be like urban farming, so that you free up land, agricultural land, maybe for like carbon sequestration projects where you plant a bunch of trees and do whatever it takes to sequester carbon, and other types of ideas. But the Arctic refreezing is definitely one of the things I think that you're right is on top of the list. If we could try to somehow artificially cool it and start trying to refreeze it, it would be way better to start now than when it's definitely way too late. Although some people would say it's too late already. And then I guess to break that down, how would we do that? I mean, I guess that's why we're going to talk about it, because I guess I don't really know, but on the top of my head, I'd say sometimes it feels so impossible. Maybe we need to contact people in other countries who maybe are more open to like finding finance to actually run this, or get their governments behind it.
I'd like to actually comment on what you just said, and just to kind of bring some clarity to where I'm coming from in all this, and what I think is possible and achievable. So let me do a quick screen share to help clarify that, and then I'll go on mute and love to hear everyone's thoughts. But basically, from a radical collective intelligence perspective, so we definitely need to create a whole bunch of solutions, and I'll just kind of represent those as just kind of like this big cloud over here. You know, we need solutions for refreezing the Arctic, solutions for cleaning up the oceans, sequestering carbon, doing urban farming, transforming the very mode of production of the global economy. So there's this massive set of solutions that we need to create. And so what I'm proposing is that we go one step upstream in the river of generating solutions and actually create an engine for generating solutions. And that's really what radical collective intelligence, abbreviated RCI, that's what that is or intended to be, is an engine for generating solutions. And when we talk about solutions, let's take, you know, refreezing the Arctic, for example. Let's just say this square right here that I'm darkening in is refreezing the Arctic. Well, one could immediately say, all right, well, to refreeze the Arctic, we need engineering solutions, which I'll represent as this box right behind it, right? We need all these engineering solutions. So if this box is the goal of refreezing the Arctic, this box here might represent, I'll just put engineering solutions to abbreviate it. Well, if we're going to, then to support those engineering solutions, we need finance, right? As long as we're wedded to the money system, to the capitalist system, as evil as that may be, as necessary evil as one might see it, or maybe we get rid of that first. But one way or another, we need to grapple with the finance question. Either we get rid of money or we leverage money. And to do that, it's pretty clear we're going to need some political solutions, right? You know, how do we get the governments of the world to stop investing trillions of dollars in military expenditures and tax breaks to the oil companies, and actually invest funds in refreezing the Arctic? Well, if we're going to get those kind of political solutions to happen, those have to be preceded by, I'll just call them social / cultural / global movement solutions. You know, we need to get the world to wake up that the Arctic needs to be refrozen urgently, or else all of life on Earth is imminently threatened, et cetera, et cetera. So do you see how this represents sort of like a stream of solutions that leads ultimately towards the achievement of the goal, right? You know, it's kind of like we keep going upstream, 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 and saying, okay, well, to achieve that, what do we need? Well, to achieve that, what do we need? Well, to achieve that, what do we need? And for me, the ultimate upstream step is radical collective intelligence itself. In other words, first build the engine that can in turn generate and keep generating all of these solutions that we need to achieve our goal. Well, what do we need to develop radical collective intelligence? Well, we've got a small team that's developing the first platform that we're going to be launching in the next few weeks. It always seems like it's 2 weeks away, but this time I really think it is. And then we need to get people to join that, like we're doing right now. This is a part of the radical collective intelligence because it's recorded and broadcast. So anyway, with that overview, I'm gonna go on mute and let others jump in. But I think we really need this kind of big picture thinking, because we need to hit upon so many different solutions of so many different types. Michael, I want to welcome you and see how you're doing. Let's check in with Michael real quick. How are you doing there in France, Michael? And feel free to jump in.
I'm doing well. Big windstorm blew into the valley here in France. You see me because but I can't see myself.
No, we can't see you. We can't see you. We just see your photograph. No, we can't see you. We just see your photograph.
I'm toggling my camera on. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. Anyway, I did be going along, and of course, falling off. There we go. I'm just so excited with imminent launch of this platform called Radic.
Okay, you're breaking up, but what I heard you say was that you're very excited about the imminent launch of Radish, and we're getting some echo on your end, so if you don't mind muting your microphone, that when you're not that. Thank you. Okay, awesome. All righty. Well, I'll go back on mute and love to hear everyone's thoughts.
Okay, I'll jump in here. Turn my camera on. The radish idea and what you just put up on your screen share there is exactly the process thinking that we need to bring people together in an organized fashion, bring their information together, and start creating those solutions, rallying the resources and the manpower. And I would like to offer something into the mix that you just put up on your screen there, Jamin, and that I believe that we really need to consider how we organize people in face-to-face enterprises. So, for example, universities around here are essentially captured agents. This book is written about, it's called Oil's Deep State. And the subtitle is How Petroleum Industry Undermines Democracy and Stops Action on Global Warming in Ottawa and in Alberta. So it talks about how the universities here, the University of Calgary, for example, is so in bed with the oil industry that indeed the necessary actions have been repressed. So I would suggest part of that process that you presented includes creating cooperative universities. And that means getting youth and young people to suggest, well, you could go to the University of Calgary, but be aware that it's a corporation and you're going to be working for those vested interests. Or do you want to potentially come together in a cooperative university where you may actually, while you are learning, be subsidizing your education or maybe even making a profit? So just a thought. I think it's important to revisit universities and the opportunities they could present.
Well, just a quick comment from me on that, and then I'll go back on mute because I don't want to be a microphone hog. But you could think of Radical Collective Intelligence, including all of these recorded video conferences that we're doing, as an online university of sorts, a radical online university. And I think that given the urgency, it's very important that we just keep it going and keep inviting people and keep showing up ourselves and instantiate it immediately, right here, right now, you know, as opposed to, and I don't think you're advocating for this, but as opposed to like taking the next 6 months to establish an online university, but by then, you know, the opportunity to save life on Earth has been lost because we focused on establishing a university rather than taking the necessary steps to refreeze the Arctic, right, through Radical Collective Intelligence. So anyway, those are my 2 cents. I'm going back on mute.
Jamin. So, and everybody, when you set up this Radish site and you have, and you're soliciting for all these solutions, and the ultimate goal is to come up with plans to save the world, right? So, is the Radish site going to be divided up? So, the one part will be about saving the Arctic, and there might be another part about saving, restoring the oceans, providing food, addressing the nuclear issues. Is that how it's going to work?
Absolutely. Imagine, you know, thousands of parallel conversations building on Miles's metaphor of a university. You know, just like at a major university, you'll have thousands of classes, or at any given moment, maybe hundreds, but all going in parallel, right? Focusing on very different topics right? And I believe that's exactly what's needed, because we need to simultaneously come up with the engineering solutions, the financial solutions, the political solutions, the social and cultural solutions, the memes, the PR solutions, the ideas, the idea viruses, all of this, as well as all of the necessary components of radical collective intelligence. So we need to simultaneously come up with a whole bunch of different kinds of solutions all at once, and that means parallel conversations on all these diverse topics simultaneously.
So then how does the computer use fit into this?
Absolutely. Great. That's a great question. Let me just review that real quickly. So here, let me, I'm going to pull up a screen share real quick. There we go.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tony.
Whoops. Okay. So let me get back to the video that Michael and I did yesterday as an introduction to radical collective intelligence. And we referenced this video that I just love to play 1.5-minute clips from. So I won't replay the whole thing, but you start with a goal, whatever that goal may be, refreezing the Arctic. In this particular example, removing ice from power lines, map it into its different ways of achieving that goal, all the different resources that can be combined to fulfill on one or more of those ways. And so we end up with a map like we reviewed yesterday, that comes up with all these different, ultimately generates solutions. So this is a very systematic step-by-step process. Now, the radical collective intelligence, the computer will provide the interface with which to do this, but it's humans who need to come along and actually create the topics and fill in those topics with conversations. So that's one part of it, is building out these taxonomies of topics. And so this is but one taxonomy, again, for removing ice from power lines. Let me show this image that we looked at yesterday. Now go from that one goal. Imagine that one goal of removing ice from power lines is represented by this one filled in green leaf goal. And again, I referred to the video from yesterday, the introduction. That sits alongside all of the other goals that we need to achieve. So through this process of building out these taxonomies of ways of achieving each goal, all these resources down here that can be combined in different ways to form solutions, and then finally where you make the connection is where the solution is complete and it actually fulfills on that goal. And so that's sort of this taxonomic graphical representation of all the different topics. We call this the toposphere, all the topics, whether the topics are the goals themselves, the ways to achieve them, the various resources, the ways to combine those resources, all of those are topics. And finally, the ultimate solutions that come out, those are topics. And so what the computer is doing, so meanwhile, so you've got this great map, this great toposphere loaded with all this information. And then you've got the conversational domain, which is the domain that we're in right now. We're just talking, right? Well, we're just talking, but while we're talking, the AI is listening, transcribing what we're saying into text, indexing that text, and mapping it to all the topics in the toposphere. To what end? Well, to various ends. Number one, if you're like, well, I'm interested in this topic right here, of building this solution. Well, the AI will be able to show you, look, these are all the people who have been talking about that very topic in the last 48 hours or whatever time window you're interested in. In fact, there's 5 conversations happening right now on this topic. And 3 of those are available to join. Here's a brief, summary statement of each of those conversations. Jump into whichever one you want, right? So the AI facilitates by connecting people to conversations, by mapping what people say to the toposphere, and organizing all this information in a way that makes it all very accessible. So this dialectic between people talking and the AI organizing it, and then that organization of information facilitating more people joining the appropriate conversations to push the ball down the field. For example, how do we refreeze the Arctic? Well, there's a whole bunch of conversations that need to happen before that's going to happen. So it's a dialectic between people talking and AI assimilating what the people are saying and organizing it in the toposphere. And then finally, the third stage of a whole different application of AI is where we take all of the solutions that are generated and say, oh, and put them all into what's called a global holistic model that can simultaneously model and in fact optimize different combinations of solutions and different sequences of deployment of specific solutions. Just like we talked about a moment ago, right here, where it's like, well, to get to that goal, first we need this solution to be implemented, and then, but for that solution to happen, we need this other solution to happen, and so on and so on and so on. We keep going upstream until we get right here, right now, where we are right here at the social club at the end of the world. That's sort of like the first domino in this whole progression, because it's out of this conversation that radical collective intelligence will be refined and perfected. But anyway, so we come up with all the solutions in the sequence that we need. Global holistic modeling helps us really model them out holistically, so that we look at not just, oh, we want to remove ice from power lines, therefore let's dump a bunch of chemicals on the power lines. Yes, that would remove ice from the power lines, but it would create a whole bunch of unintended consequences, most of which would be negative, if not all of them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we need the holistic aspect. We need to model all the solutions simultaneously. So these are really the three main layers, as I have it in my mind, of what radical collective intelligence should become. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and go on mute, because I'm going to try to keep my comments not too loquacious, not too long. And great question, Adam. And please let me know if I answered your question, and if not, I'm happy to clarify.
You did. I'd like to ask a little bit more about this modeling. So the artificial AI, do you mean artificial intelligence? So a self-learning computer?
Well, here's the thing. It's not that there is this one AI. It's like HAL, and HAL's going to do this, and HAL's going to do that, and HAL's going to do that. No. It's actually multiple different types of artificial intelligence, multiple different code bases that are brought to bear, each focused on a specific task. So it's not like there's this one big smart computer that's like watching everything like HAL in 2001 and is, ultimately pushing us humans around. It's the opposite. We humans, we community of humans, open source, create and refine and perfect a whole bunch of different, software programs, to give it a simplistic name, each of which has a specific task, like transcription of voice to text. There is one AI that does that, and that's all it knows how to do. It doesn't know how to do anything else. It doesn't know how to think. All it knows how to do is, here's this pattern of sounds. Oh, this maps to this word or this combination of words, right? Like that over and over and over again across all the parts of radical collective intelligence. So if you're looking for a smart computer brain that's kind of at the center of it, it doesn't exist. And if you're looking for a human who's at the center of it, who has it all figured out, that person doesn't exist either. It's all about bringing all these pieces together. Think like bees in a bee colony. There's no one bee that's got it all figured out. It's the operating system that keeps all the bees working together. That's where the magic is. And that's what we're co-creating here, is this operating system called radical collective intelligence. Go ahead on mute.
Well, ultimately, someone has to make the decisions. I mean, so if you're the Starship Enterprise, you can't have everybody making decisions. I mean, with regards to the focus or the role of the ship. So if you have these computers mapping all these conversations and all this information, I'm just thinking that artificial intelligence, if you had a self-learning computer that would assimilate all this information and say, well, this is the way we need to go. Otherwise you're just collecting a bunch of information, and then how does it get applied?
Yeah. The short answer for how it gets applied is that solutions are created to orchestrate the application of the other solutions, right? So the grand solution to make sure that all the other solutions get applied may well constitute a combination of political revolution, cultural revolution, a revolution in memes and what people talk about every day. Did you hear about this? Oh my goodness, they're refreezing the Arctic. Oh my goodness, they have a plan for this, a plan for that. Well, I'm on board, right? Something. So the solution may be a political party, a planetary one of the solutions, right? Maybe a planetary political party that people can join and that builds momentum. Let's look at one very practical potential application of all this that I think might shed some light on kind of like who's in charge and who's the Captain Kirk of all this. Okay, so let's say that we come up with some really good, the collective intelligence. Several hundred of us get together and collectively co-create actual engineering solutions for refreezing the Arctic, right? I'm an engineer. Some of others of us are very technical. Others are scientists. Anyway, the scientists and engineers get together, and hundreds of us, and co-create, and we design all these. So we've got it all designed, but there's no one to implement. Okay, great. We then imagine, like, one of the things I want to do in the coming days, and I invite you all to join me on this, is to create an open message to the president of Finland, who notably in the last couple of months or so told President Donald Trump, if we lose the Arctic, we lose the planet. In my open message to the president of Finland, which in turn is another solution, you see how this is going? That's another solution or component thereof. We say, Mr. President of Finland, we would like to request that you and the people of Finland join with us, the radical collective intelligence, to actually begin to implement the refreezing of the Arctic. Now, assuming the country of Finland doesn't have all the resources to do it themselves, which they probably don't, think back to the old story Stone Soup, right? This would be the equivalent of Finland putting the pot, the water, and the stone, starting to build the fire and saying, okay, the rest of y'all come join us, right? Maybe Finland gets a small fleet of blimps up there with some thin film reflective material and starts to do like a case study in how to do this. Then the rest of the world can hear about that story and think of that story as yet another solution, right? And on we go until other countries start to get on board, other media outlets start to cover it. And then next thing you know, you've got a whole bunch of countries participating in this very open source process for refreezing the Arctic. Going on mute.
Well, Miles turned me on to the idea of the time bank, which might fit in here pretty good because you're talking about getting our engineers, together to figure out these solutions, but they have to make money. So, we have to survive, and we survive off of money today. So if we could get their services or help, and at the same time they could be contributing to a time bank, that might be one way to help. So.
No, you see, and what you just said is yet another solution, right? A time bank, right? So just like, there's probably been half a dozen solutions mentioned just in the last 10 minutes. All of these need to be, mapped out, put in, into the toposphere in appropriate taxonomies, and ultimately modeled through the global holistic model. But at the end of the day, there are going to be groups of people who say, I like that idea, and we're going to implement that part of it right now, right? As opposed to waiting for all 7.4 billion of us, to sign on the dotted line to some, 670,000 page document that's, the whole solution. I think more likely it's going to happen incrementally. And I think beehives provide us a really interesting model for how that happens, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to go on mute, and because I'm trying to keep my contributions concise, so that we can really get the dialectic going. Going on mute.
Okay, I'll jump in unless somebody else wants to talk. And I will try to be concise too, because I know I can ramble on. So shut me down if I do. But with respect to the idea of the time bank.
Okay, that's enough, Miles. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Here, let me turn my camera on. Okay, so I agree with everything that has been said, and the idea of approaching things as a beehive is really important. We need to get the Radish up and running, and that does become an online university, which incidentally, we should remember what university, what it comes from. It means unity in our diversity. So we have 7.4 billion people who are from very diverse backgrounds, but we are united because we all owe our existence to sustaining Mother Earth. So that's one of the important what's in it for me aspects of what we're doing. But we also have to address what's in it for me with respect to how do I pay my bills as we go about this radical change. And this is where I see the need for an on-the-ground series of universities, like more face-to-face universities that are under the umbrella of this radical collective intelligence, because we have to get people involved, everybody motivated, and collectively become this very powerful force. With respect to the idea of the beehive, there's an excellent example of that I saw just the other day on a video called The Third Industrial Revolution by Jeremy Rifkin. And the documentary starts out in a big empty warehouse. And you're thinking, well, I wonder what this big empty warehouse is all about. The doors open and all these people, mostly young people, millennials, all come streaming in, and they walk by a rack of folded chairs. They each pick up their own chair. They walk out into the big warehouse and they open their own chair. They sit down. And it's just phenomenal to see the power of many people working like a bunch of bees, in that they all set up the chairs, their own chair, to create a massive auditorium in a matter of a minute. And then they could be told to actually pick up your chair and put it back on the rack. But that's what we need to start thinking of. So with respect to reflecting energy back up to space, I sometimes have been thinking, well, with respect to your idea of thin films, what if everybody just was told as a beehive to participate in an experiment where we all go out and we hold up a big reflector? Would if 1 billion people did that all at the same time and pointed it in the correct direction to reflect that energy back, would it have any effect? But anyway, it's where you would see not only the online university of the Radish, but also on the ground actions as a beehive. I'll go on mute.
Yeah, totally. No, I really like, by the way, if anyone jumps in at the same time that I start talking, I'm going to give them the microphone and I'll go on mute. I've got so much to say that if there's silence, I'll jump in, but really jump in, everyone. And please feel free to override me. But as far as bees, I think beehives are really amazing model for us. In fact, there's this excellent book called, I think it's called Honeybee Democracy. And it talks about the democratic process by which the colony of bees when it needs to find a new home, the democratic process that it undertakes to figure out the best place to go, the best new home, the new home site. And then once that democratic process is all shaken out, literally the entire colony, all hundreds or thousands, however many there are, they all fly off to the new site, right? And they're using collective intelligence in the process of site selection. And the way they do it is, hundreds of scouts go out in, an area of multiple square miles, and just, each scout is just randomly searching kind of on their own. So in other words, they're not guided by any one central Captain Kirk that tells all the scouts where to go individually or collectively. No, the scouts just randomly in a random search process. And then when they come back from finding sites that they think are suitable, each scout is independently able to, basically grok a site and say, okay, it's well protected. It's got this much space. I think it'll be suitable. They fly back to the colony and do a dance, right? And the duration of their dance, the intensity of their dance is a function of how suitable the site is. So if it's an okay site, they'll kind of do an okay dance. If it's a really awesome site, they'll bust out with a Michael Jackson Thriller kind of dance, and everyone's just like, woo, right? And then, that influences other people to go check out the site and vet it and verify it. And, in the end, there's this kind of, it's sort of like a political process in a country where you have different political parties, a different, rooting for, promoting different sites. And, through this very beautiful stochastic process, the entire colony ultimately converges on one site that not everyone has seen, only the scouts really. And then the whole hive flies off to that site. So that's kind of like what radical collective intelligence is. But what enables the bees to do it, if there's not a central controller or a central bee that's like the dictator who's orchestrating, then how does it happen? It happens because all of these honeybees have encoded into them genetically an operating system, right? It's like they've all, got a copy of, iOS 12 or whatever that basically tells them, if you're a scout, right, because different bees in the colony have different roles. If you're a scout, this is how you operate. If you're a farmer, this is how, if you're the queen, this is how you operate. But they're all operating under the same operating system, and that's what makes it work. What we need to do as humanity is come up with a new operating system not for the bees, but for ourselves. We need a new operating system that tells Jamin Shively, Jamin, when you're, in your role as, organizer of radical collective intelligence, this is what you need to do. And, some thin film engineer, this is what you need to do, right? The collective, but here's the thing, rather than having it hard coded into us genetically or even written out on some place that we can read, it will be a constantly evolving operating system, right? The first iteration of radish.org seeks to be, that very first disk operating system, so to speak, metaphorically, that at least gets the radical collective intelligence started. And at this point, I can't help but show, I'll do a screen share in a moment. First, let me just pull up the set of images. I'll be showing this at the Sierra Club in a couple days down in California. But here goes. Okay. Okay, doing screen share. So if the operating system is represented by this little blue box, this is the platform upon which radical collective intelligence can grow, and all these solutions can grow. If that's our platform for radical collective intelligence, what will grow on top of it with all of our participation is the actual collective intelligence, which is represented by this little brain here, right? This little image of a brain. And over time, as more people join and as more conversations happen, the actual intelligence grows and grows and grows. And it's really constrained only by the operating system itself, right? The platform, the information and communication technologies that make up the radical collective intelligence platform. Well, this actual intelligence will then be able to generate a whole bunch of solutions, including the solution of, drum roll, what's the next generation of the platform that we need to build, the next generation of the software, of all the systems, the interfaces, etc., right? And then, of course, that new and improved platform will be able to support a new, improved, and greatly expanded collective intelligence, which in turn will be able to generate a whole bunch more solutions, much better, much faster, much more efficiently, much higher quality solutions, including, drum roll, the next generation of the platform, which will support a much greater intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. There is no end to this exponential process. And that's really the one thing that gives me hope in the face of so much horrifically bad news, is that we, through this process, have the potential to kick off an exponentially growing, evolving, radical collective intelligence, to come up with truly amazing, mind-boggling solutions that we could not even conceive of today because we're too stupid. We're too stupid individually, and we're too stupid in terms of our operating system. Our current operating system as humanity on planet Earth is very simple. Each of you go out and chop down as many trees as you can, frack as much oil out of the ground as you can, make as much money as you can, and fuck the planet and fuck everyone else. And pardon the F-bombs. I'll try to limit those going forward, actually eliminate them. Jason, you're on mute, so I couldn't see what you're saying. But anyway, speaking of muting, I'm going to go on mute so y'all can speak.
Well, I mean, it sounds good, looks good, Jamin. I mean, I hope the machine doesn't end up telling you that there's no good solutions. Because then I guess if your whole system backfires on you and just tells everybody, oh, well, nothing's really going to cut it.
Well, here's the thing, Jason. The system is actually not designed to be able to actually ever come to the conclusion that there are no good solutions. What it can do through global holistic modeling is evaluate through simulation, through simultaneous simulation of multiple solutions being implemented in sequence. It is smart enough to tell you whether that set of solutions is enough to refreeze the Arctic and achieve whatever other goals. But it will never be able to tell you that there are no solutions, because it's up to the humans to come up with the solutions. So if at whatever snapshot moment in time, the best solutions that we've come up with so far don't cut it, that's simply a signal for us to go back to the drawing board and collectively co-create more solutions and better solutions. Going back on mute.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I guess if the computer is just trying to help us foster us along, then maybe that'll be good. I'm ready for 1.0. You said 2 weeks. Can't wait.
We're going to be meeting. I'm going to be meeting with our lead technical person in about a little less than 3 hours. And Michael, if you can join us as well, that would be awesome. We're going to be reviewing the latest code base, we're just going to be working with it and basically testing it out and seeing if it's exactly what we want and if we think it's ready for launch. So we may be launching in less than 2 weeks.
Sweet.
Well, I'll jump in here and just say I think that the difference that I see with this Radish and the platform you're developing is that it proposes solutions for which people can rally around and bring the resources to the table and carry forward to implement something other than what we typically see to date. Is there's some sort of an issue that people are wanting to protest, and most often than not, it seems, okay, we'll have a march. And, marches are great, I guess, in that it shows how many people are for or against something. But we need to do more than just march, right? We need to actually participate in something else. Like, is it holding up, putting a mirror on your roof and pointing it to the sun, or installing some sort of a big, when you think about not too long ago, how many of those big, remember the old satellite TV dishes? Some of those were massive, right? People had them in their backyards. I don't know when that was, in the 80s, I guess. But obviously we can produce big parabolic dishes. And if everybody was told, okay, you want to participate in this experiment even, you will get this thin film parabolic dish and you will point it back to the sky, because that may have a significant effect in cooling the planet. Maybe we don't have to have the reflectors up in the Arctic, for example, in other words. So anyhow, that's just an idea to how to cool the planet, how to rally people together using Radish, and everybody participates in some unified action, and many solutions possibly. I sort of wonder, well, okay, like we have 1 billion automobiles pumping out carbon dioxide. Well, why can't we figure out how everybody can purchase a machine that at least complements the automobile they own, that somehow takes CO2 and turns it into something innocuous? Anyway, ideas like that. And that's where we bring together people and resources. Everybody's got so many resources sitting around that are not collectively doing anything. Like I have a mirror over here, where I could have paintbrushes. I could create my own parabolic dish if somebody gave me some instructions to do that.
What if somebody, comes up with a machine to take carbon out of the air, and so they come and present it on Radish, and then somebody steals the idea, or oil companies get a hold of Radish and say we're going to nix that. I mean, there's just a lot of people are going to hesitate to put their ideas out there, maybe.
Well, look, first of all,
I want to just comment on that, because I sort of mentioned that before, not on this episode, but actually before we started recording. But it's an interesting conversation. I mean, first of all, we mentioned, though, that this is an open source group. So if you're coming in here to bring your ideas in here, we're all collectively trying to solve the world's biggest problem. And it has many facets in it. And so we're going to need people to bring in their ideas. Yeah, there's been people who had ideas to make cars more gas efficient, for instance, which are probably all patents now owned by the oil industry and the car companies who don't want you to have a more oil efficient car. But that's why, we are up against those big industries for sure. But we need people to bring forward different solutions so they could kind of be weighed next to each other and decide which one is the most cost effective, but eliminates the most carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And then collectively people have got to build that. So I think it has to be understood ahead of time that this is an open source platform. And if you bring your ideas and present them here, that it's part of the global, it's now part of the sphere of whatever. Don't come if you're going to be greedy with your ideas and you just want to profit. Maybe Jamin has something to say about that.
Yeah, what's really deeply frustrating to me about how the oligarchy looks at world problems is they're all looking at well, how can I make a buck on implementing X, Y, or Z solution, right? So it maps back to this cancerous poison called money. We're taking a radically different approach. We're simply saying, okay, what are all the solutions that we need? And I'm not trying to make a penny off of this. In fact, I'm spending all my money getting this launched. And if if we launch this successfully and I'm penniless and homeless, I will be the happiest man on earth because we will have gotten it launched. But anyway, that's me. you know, there will be people that get on radish who are looking to make a buck. Understandably so. People need to eat. People need to survive. And there will also be people coming from just a purely, you know, altruistic, selfless perspective, saying, I'm just here to help create solutions, and I'm not trying to make any money, and everything in between. I cannot imagine a scenario in which an oil company would, you know, get a hold of radish. Radish is not for sale and will never be for sale. I don't care how many billions are offered. It's simply not for sale. And that's because it's just too darn important for saving life on Earth. That's not something that can possibly have a price tag in my world. Anyway, that's what I have to say about that. But keep it flowing. If I haven't answered a certain question or concern, just hit me back with it. And I'd really love to see everyone jump in. So I'm gonna.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I've been afraid about my microphone echoing. Can you guys hear me okay? Am I not breaking up?
No, we can hear you fine.
Okay.
Go, Michael, go.
Yeah. So I think this represents, you know, radish and the brain swarming, you know, dynamic of the taxonomy. It's a new paradigm, right? It represents the open society, you know, versus the closed. You know, where not only, you know, money is being hoarded, property, et cetera, you know, within our capitalistic culture, we have the hoarding of knowledge, right, as something that gives one status. You know, the system is based on that, and there are certain elements of it that I think are, you know, legitimate. Like if I write a novel, I don't want, you know, Jamin to publish it, you know, under his name and take credit for it, right? Duh. So there are certain parts of it that are sort of legitimate, but at the same time, this new way of sharing, you know, data, information, is something that is being employed elsewhere in the world. Open science projects, for example, that even have a very strong public domain. And so it's not that is necessarily new here, but just because the openness and the transparency of the platform. I mean, in a way, it could also double as almost kind of like a, you know, a WikiLeaks of sorts, where people, you know, find out about something, they want to put it out there because that becomes important for our mission at Radish. You know, in terms of like legal, you know, challenges, from, you know, our limited experience doing trademarks for these various entities, you know, if people put their ideas out there and somebody else, you know, quote unquote, steals it, it would probably, I mean, it would be a big mistake simply because it's first use. The first person who has demonstrably used said idea or, you know, came up with said invention is the one, you know, and so insofar as that is documented, that person legally has the rights to it. So by putting your ideas out there on Radish, it's actually the opposite, I think, where by putting it out there in such a public way, you know, being recorded and all that, and posted, everybody, you know, can see the timestamp on that and say, oh yeah, that, you know, that was your idea. You know, you were there first, you put it out there, you started a whole hangout about it, you got some momentum, whatever the case may be. But then there's also the whole paradigm of abundance, right, versus scarcity. And Radish is very much an abundance paradigm that says there is enough, we have enough, at least we hope there is. We're gonna proceed as though there very well may be, and find a way to make a whole world work.
All right. I've got a great comment, Michael. And I've got an which is, what if we structured Radish in such a way that everything, every idea, every design, everything that was published on Radish was by agreement, by end user license agreement, or EULA, as we call it, by agreement, everything would be part of a Creative Commons, and it would be open source, and there would be a whole license agreement that would be written up for this purpose, so that anything that's expounded on Radish is part of the Commons. Now, you might ask, well, then, what's an engineer going to have incentive to post their best ideas up on Radish if it immediately becomes part of the Commons? And here's where your idea, Michael, fits in, is there will be a timestamp and a record of who spoke the idea first, right? Who, contributed it to the Commons, and that getting credit for that contribution can become a new form of currency, whether a cryptocurrency or just, the gratitude of the community for your having come up with that idea or whatever. But, that's a way that people can be, compensated with at least recognition and credit for the idea. Now, if other people want to vote with their pocketbook, I once participated in a competition at MIT to be the ugliest man on campus. We had this, it was an annual competition, and people would vote with money. And I got the most votes, so I got to determine where the money went. And of course, I got the recognition. There's a plaque with my name on it. But, that's an example of a different kind of currency, right? Is
that I believe.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, I said that I believe that you won the ugly contest.
Thank you, Adam, for your belief, your faith. Okay, and Michael, I think you had something to add. Go on mute.
Just that the currency is naturally going to be credibility, right? A form of credibility, which will open up all sorts of opportunity for that individual to participate in various projects and hangouts and so on and so forth. But I think you're onto something, Jamin, and we've touched upon this before, talking about like cryptocurrencies and stuff, where we also create a system or co-create a system in which, in addition to that credibility that's given for having been given, your due credit, that could even be a form of currency, in the Radish verse, or even, beyond. Precisely, where the various resources are going to go, right? Because you influence that process. And so where the resources end up going and how it's deployed, and just being a part of that, I think, and having that. I mean, let's face it, that's a form of power, right? That's a form of control. We're talking about very elemental human motivations, right? The need, right, to be recognized, the need, even for a certain amount of autonomy and power and control over, one's own world, however you want to define that. We're not here to change human nature. We're I think, wanting to work with it, not against it.
So I felt like this was brought up earlier. It's a good question, maybe. As far as going from ideas and solutions to like action and implementation, you think that as time goes on, that'll be sort of sorted out, because you don't really know whether that's going to come in private institutions or billionaires all of a sudden changing their mind and giving a bunch of money to a movement that wants to do something about this. Someone like an Elon Musk or Richard Branson, or the guy who owns eBay or Amazon, Jeff Bezos, or or whether you actually convince a government and they get their like real budget behind it. I think the idea being that it'll kind of organically grow and we'll start finding routes and ways to do this. I mean, it would probably start on a smaller level with small contributions and maybe people even getting together to build some of the maybe carbon suction machines or whatever some of these solutions may be, or trying to, on a small scale, go up to Alaska with several boats and try to implement one of the solutions to scientifically prove that it like makes some impact. And then trying to literally use that kind of information to try to influence people higher up the food chain or whatnot to pump money and financing into it. I mean, I know that one of the ideas was maybe you get rid of the whole money system so that you can get everybody to get on board with we should all actually live as one and like solve these problems as the human species, which is a really nice idea. I love that idea, although it just seems far off, considering that Americans can't even get along, let alone Americans get along with any other country. Or so I guess, did you have, off of what I just said, Jamin, did you have anything to say? Is that kind of correct? It's just going to grow organically, or
absolutely, yeah, totally. It'll grow organically. So let's take refreezing the Arctic. Let's say we come up with the engineering solutions, right? And that just takes time. We volunteer the time, and we're happy to get the recognition and the credit for having come up with the ideas, right? Okay, great. Then, a separate thread. Let's say we have a whole series of conversations about how to engage with the government and people of Finland, just for example, right? As an example. And then we implement that. And now we've got their attention. See, up till now, not a penny has transacted. It's just people are contributing their time and joining conversations and talking. But then once the president of Finland makes a speech and all the people of Finland hear it, and he says, we're going in this direction. We're joining with the radical collective intelligence, and we're going to start the process of refreezing the Arctic. Wow. Now that's world news, right? And maybe the rest of the Scandinavian countries join, and England joins, and a bunch of, governments that aren't completely corrupted by the oligarchy and the globalists.
I see that. I mean, I think that countries like Norway would maybe be much easier to get on board than our government, for instance.
Totally.
I mean, right now, with bombs going off in Austin, Texas, and crazy shit going on in the streets, I don't know if our country can pull it together. I almost feel like we'd be better off going and talking to the Chinese and the Russians.
Well, just consider 4 out of 5 of us on this call are American, right? So we're not completely out to lunch, right? If you're
as an American, I feel like, if you want to ask our government to do something, it seems hopeless. And I'm sure it seems that way to the Canadian on the call as well.
Right. Well, you notice I didn't say that any of us work for the government. We are Americans, but we're not part of the government. Sure. I have written off the American government.
I like what you've had to say. It'll organically come, because I can name several issues or that we would run into, i.e., if there is no financing or no physical place, or no one actually tries to go up and test any of the ideas, then it's not getting anywhere. But those things, those answers you're telling me will come. We'll figure those out together. We're going to work these things out. I would say that I think one good idea, since you are about to launch the Radish thing, and I know it's maybe been talked about before, would be to actually schedule or think about scheduling some sort of conference that I would be willing to help you with. And I'm sure a lot of the other people in the network would be willing to help you with, where we actually physically get together maybe 6 months, 8 months, a year from now, to sort of actually start physically having maybe a conference getting together so that people can discuss these things in a face-to-face manner or something. I just thought
it's happening right now. We're discussing it face-to-face right now. And that's kind of my point. We don't have months to put together a conference. We have months to refreeze the Arctic. So let Radish be the conference. Let these recorded broadcast video conferences be the conference.
Right, but you're not going to build a freaking reflective surface and refreeze the Arctic over the video conference.
Yes and no. Yes, because we're going to design the system over the video conference. Yes, because we're going to wake up Finland and the Scandinavian countries over the video conference. And yes, we're going to stone soup act of putting the pot, the water, and the stone inside of it and saying, this is a start. That will wake up the rest of the world. That is revolution. And it all started with video conferences. Going on mute.
Does everybody know who Paul Beckwith is?
Absolutely. I've emailed him, haven't heard back. Love to get him on here, but yes, know who he is. Great to
get him on here because he's, you know, a scientist that really studies all these things and knows, you know, pretty much what we need to do to refreeze the Arctic, to take the carbon out of the oceans, and you know what the dire circumstances are. It'd be really nice to get him on here.
All right, Miles, you wanna reach out to your fellow Canadian Paul Beckwith and get him on there, get him on here?
Sure, I would be pleased to do that and give it a try anyway. If anybody would not have an objection, could I just take a moment to talk about money and try to be very brief about it? Because I think we do need to know the system that we are presently in and be on guard for it or leverage as much as we can to change it. So I'll be brief, but essentially there's two forms of totalitarianism. There's classical totalitarianism, which is like Stalinist Russia or Soviet Union, where you have an obvious dictator who's just calling the shots. Nazi Germany with Adolf Hitler, again, classic totalitarianism. Everybody marches to the same drum and it's very obvious. There's another form of totalitarianism and it's called inverted totalitarianism. And this is all from an American professor named Sheldon Woolen. And there's a 2.5-hour interview of Sheldon Woolen by Chris Hedges that I suggest you watch to understand this concept of inverted totalitarianism. So essentially in the United States and Canada, you know, if I say something disparaging about the US, just assume I'm also saying it's in Canada too. But we are existing in inverted totalitarianism. So in other words, it's covert. The totalitarianism is covert. The powers that be are under the radar, and we are essentially going through their hoops without consciously knowing it. But Princeton, University of Princeton, big American university, there's a recent report that they did a couple of years ago that says, indeed, the United States is not a democracy, it's an oligarchy. So these are not my words. I'm not an economist. I'm just spouting what I've read. In addition, I think we need to appreciate the financial situation and the way it operates. So again, I'm just quoting, but from this book by a prominent Canadian politician, former Minister of Defense. This is his words, not mine. Greed knows no bounds. So what has happened since the mid-70s is that essentially nations like Canada gave up the government part or partnership of making money. The making of money since the mid-70s is done by private banks. So, to quote, one would think that their licenses to create $20,000 in accounts receivable for every $1,000 capital invested would be so embarrassingly lucrative that the banksters would keep silent and enjoy their vast fortunes. So what that means is that today, all the money is created by private banks. You put $1,000 in, It gives them license to create 20,000. And then they have, from your $1,000 that you have deposited, they have 20,000 of money they just create. It's just like, okay, now we've got 20,000, and they can lend out that other 19,000 to other people and make interest on that money. So when it comes to changing the world, we do have to get back to what Adam's been talking about and really seriously scrutinize how money is made. All right, so I won't take too much longer, but to quote from Professor Carol Quigley, Bill Clinton's mentor at Georgetown University, it has all been part of a concerted plan by a clique of international financiers. He wrote in Tragedy and Hope in 1964. So people have recognized this threat since the 60s. The powers of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. The system was to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world, acting in concert by secret agreements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences. So when the Bilderbergers get together, you have Davos and a lot of these things and others that we don't even know about, these private cliques are controlling the money supply. So if we want to change the world, we have to address this, understand it, because it's like going to war. You have to mobilize massive changes in the economy like Roosevelt did in the 30s. So the apex of the system was to be the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. It is a system that is rotten to the core, and money is the gasoline that fires the economic engine. To give private corporations a monopoly to create money is total insanity. To let them create all the money as debt that has to be repaid with interest goes beyond total insanity. If that is possible, it's a crime against humanity. So you have the situation down in the United States where students are now saddled with 12 trillion in debt. It's like absolutely obscene. So anyway, it's we have to recognize these facts, and part of this change has got to be lobbying for better control.
Well, speaking of control, I want to welcome Detective Jamie Gilchrist, retired drug enforcement. I think he's here to shut us down. He's the man the government has sent in to shut us all down. No, I'm just kidding. He's retired and very much part of the radish movement, the radical movement. Welcome, Jamie. How you doing there, brother?
Good. I'm not going to talk long. I've been listening. I just got a signal that I could jump on. I'm driving to Florida, taking a friend down there who couldn't drive herself. So I'm going to mute out if I can figure out how to do that. Otherwise, I'll just go back to listening. But the conversation is fantastic. And everybody's hit on the exact same thing. We have to get one of the fundamental things that I want to add, then I'm going to mute out because I'm on the freeway and it's loud. Counter currency. We have to counter currency in this movement, and we have to try to suppress the ego. That's what the bees have done, and there's been some mention that that's a new way of thinking, when in fact that's not a new way of thinking. It's taking us back to the original human way of thinking, the clan and the cooperative plan. So I don't want to, it's too much to go over, and I just jumped in late. I'm going to mute out so we don't hear the freeway stuff, and I'm going to be here. Thanks.
Awesome, Jamie. Awesome. Yeah, you muted just great, so please hang in there. It's really great to have you here. Couldn't agree more. Anyway, I love it. Great stuff. Go on, unmute.
I mean, Miles, that's interesting things that you bring up. I definitely agree, and that's why I sort of asked Jamin, like, you know, how do you actually see us going forward? And I think that there's maybe many different ways. It would be nice to completely go around the money system or something and be able to do away with all this corruption. But, you know, from the way I see it, money and interests own our politicians, at least in the United States. And I think we're going to have to, sort of like Jamie said in previous episodes, kind of create our own institutions and start trying to go around them. And I think that means also going around their status quo ideas of money and creating wealth for yourself. I mean, it kind of is almost like throwing your life the way the Western world views it, of getting the job and the family and the picket fence and the retirement savings together and work your ass off. It kind of throws all that out the door for a new paradigm of work your ass off without any real promise of getting paid anything, just to save, you know, just to try to save the world, even though it may be impossible at this point. And so I think that it's a mind flip in people's heads. And there's definitely going to be some people who are probably going to come on here at some point and be like, well, you're all nuts. You don't have any money to do it. Nothing's going to happen. And, you know, I mean, that's going to happen. And there's going to be days where maybe those people seem like they're right, but maybe, hopefully, there's a breakthrough at some point and some idea, you know, and I think it's going to be actual human beings getting together physically in places, personally, regardless of sometimes Jamin saying it can all take place on the internet. But I think that some people may naturally come together and say, like, you know, we got to form a actual center place to start building these things. Would be the only way I'd see it going down in the end. I agree that, you know, we need to have a counter currency of sorts, figure out a new way of, like, equating who's put in energy to this, maybe. And I think it was interesting that Jamie said, like, suppressing the ego. I think that the ego is something that's huge in today's day and age. I want to make money for me and my family and look out for myself. And there definitely has to be this changing, like a spinning around of going the opposite direction in your head, to where you realize, like I've realized, like I have a daughter and I want to make sure that she has a great life and everything. But if I'm all about just me and my daughter, I don't think I can't look out for the entire world if I'm only thinking about me and my daughter. I mean, we have to think on a more global level. And, you know, I think in some ways people have been challenged to do that. And I hope this can give them a platform to get together with like-minded people to really set their life goal for being to combat this whole situation. And that's definitely going to be letting go of the ego, letting go of I wanted to be a musician my whole life and be famous singing on stage. Maybe you need to say, fuck it. The only thing that really matters at this point is just doing something selfless, you know, that I may not get recognized individually for, that I may never get any credit for, that no one would maybe pay me any money or feed me a meal because I did it. But I have to find it within me to do something bigger than myself and sort of suppress the ego. If you'd like, I'd prefer like to kind of, yeah. So anyways, I hear you about money. I think we sort of have always come back to money sometimes in the end, but I think that we'll obviously need to find ways that money isn't so important, and that people need to say, I'm going to do this not for financial money gain. And I can tell Adam's sort of rearing and ready to go. So let's see what you have to say about money, Adam.
Well, I think it's interesting, this counter currency idea. I'm not sure that that would work, but I like what James said about going back to our primitive times. When we talk about money today and complain about capitalism and all this, we always refer back to different oligarchies or totalitarianism or different forms of monetary government. And if you think about it and look at it, none of them have worked. Money just doesn't work. It creates an artificial environment and takes our mind off of the real environment, which is the earth that we live in. And we hardly ever go back. Sorry about that. We hardly ever go back to our the hunters and gatherers that lived on the earth, and how did they live? You know, how did they get along? What was their form of government? And they lived on the earth for tens of thousands of years in harmony with the earth. And today, but since we started using money, money corrupts everything. And greed is just a product of money. I mean, the only difference between the richest man in the world and me is money. You could take all these rich people, like Jason mentioned, and you could put them on the street as a beggar, you know, as a homeless person, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And so, I mean, money. People grow up in money, and they get exposed to things that other people don't get exposed to, and they get education and stuff like this, and often they think they're better, and this is where the pride and the ego comes in. They think they're better than other people, but they're not. They're just people. And that's all I would say.
So I'm gonna jump in there, and then I see Miles. I know you want to respond to that. I was just gonna say that I view money more as like a communication network. You know, someone sets up the rules of how people are communicating what is owed to who. And it definitely can be, the rules can then be transcribed in a way that's very unfair. And so a majority of the people feel like they are getting screwed. And, but just to sort of not really play devil's advocate, but just to think about a different way that it could go down instead of doing it the very anarchist way. Because when you sort of talk about tribal communities, hunter and gatherer, I think of an anarchist society. Now, this society has been built through totalitarians and capitalists and people who really do things a certain way. And we've gotten this mess that's been created by that. And I don't know that just kind of being all anarchists and tribal all of a sudden is going to save us from that, because we have a mess we have to actually clean up. And we need to communicate with each other. We need to act like a big tribe. Which maybe you could say would be this world tribe. So this world anarchism or world tribalism could maybe save us. But another idea would just be if we change the rules of how you could make money and said that you can only profit and make money now if you're solving these problems. And if you aren't really creating real value in solving problems, then you don't get any money. And that we're going to come and collect your money if you're sitting on top of it, and we're going to take it away from you if we don't feel like you're using it. Now, this all sounds very totalitarian. Even if you say it that way, it sounds like we're going to come and get your money. So I don't really know how to present that idea, but I'm just saying there's another idea there. If you were tapped into governments, that you could maybe change the rules on who can make money and how money is made and what the currency is and who issues it. And so I don't know that talking down to the idea of doing an analysis of inverted totalitarianism, because I agree. I've read this, I've watched this thing with Chris Hedges and with Sheldon Wollenson or whatever his name is, and the idea of inverted totalitarianism. And I sort of agree that that's what we're in a sense. and it's sort of churning us up, and I don't know if we can really escape from that. And that's why exiting from that and trying to create something new that is separate and going around everybody else, all the corporations and all the governments, seems appealing to me. But I guess I just...
Well, Josh, or Jason, rather, I would like to actually just say what you said about looking at who creates money, who gets to have the money is essentially what this gentleman says as well, eventually. And who's that fellow that used to say, now for the rest of the story? I forget that guy. He was on the radio a lot, and he always came back, now for the rest of the story. He had this final little quip he had to add. Anyway, I'd like to add the rest of the story too, because I explained how this book describes that since the 70s, money has now been handed over completely to these private bankers. And these are the oligarchs and the ever increasing concentration of wealth. Because yes, if you've got this sweetheart deal that if I give you $1,000, you now get to create 20,000, and you can lend it out to people and charge them interest. Well, you would think that that would be enough of a guaranteed golden ticket for these bankers. But here, in a letter to the Federal Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke, dated June 27, 2013, U.S. Representative Alan Grayson and 3 co-signers expressed concern about the expansion of large banks into what have traditionally been non-financial commercial spheres. So the letter says, and again, I'm just a schmuck who reads stuff to you, right? This is none of my creation. This is, again, 4 U.S. representatives. Specifically, we are concerned about how large banks have recently expanded their business into such fields as electric power production, oil refining and distribution, owning and operating of public assets as ports and airports, and even uranium mining. In other words, the banks are moving into not just creating money and charging us all these fees and interest, but actually buying up the assets. So, one of the things for everybody to take a stand on right now down in the United States and here in Canada, because I've heard the same intimation up here by my elected representative, is the privatization of the post office. There's very few things left in the public commons, but this is the whole concept of companies such as J.P. Morgan, not only acting as a bank and creating money, both issuing credit cards and mortgages, managing financial municipal bond offerings, selling gasoline and electric power, running large oil tankers, trading derivatives, and owning and operating airports in multiple countries. So anyway, this is what we have to be aware of is our current situation, and it's going to take a massive amounts of money. And as Jason said, we have to start telling these people that you've been running amok, and this whole concept of austerity, which just allows them to say, oh, you haven't paid you didn't pay back the loan we lent you. Well, we take your house. Or if it's a whole nation, we take your airports, we take your power production, we take all those hard assets. So that's what we're up against.
So
that's the rest of the story.
Does Adam have a solution to what he sees as this money problem that you'd like to present, Adam? Since we're talking about solutions, and then maybe Miles can tell if he has some sort of solution to the money problem.
Well, I think we're running out of time. If you talk to the professors that study the environment and stuff, I mean, I don't know, be honest with you, if you have time to develop this radical collective intelligence, which is awesome. But I think we do have time to develop a plan so that when everything goes crazy, people will be able to look to the plan and say, well, this is the way out. And I think that there is no plan. In order to develop that plan, you have to go back to the hunters and gatherers. They were successful living on the earth, like I said, tens of thousands of years. It's only since money has come into being that mankind has been falling down. Our populations, I mean, we need to have some kind of population control for one thing, because everything that we do, money, and we started farming, started hunting and planting instead of being hunters and gatherers, and then what happens is the population overshoots. Guy McPherson explains this very very well. But when it hits the fan and everything goes down, including probably computers and electricity, maybe they won't, but we need to have a plan for what to do then, because then we can actually take these ideas and make them happen. I mean, like Paul Beckwith, he and many others are telling us that we've gone over the cliff. We're like a river that's we're just little drops of water in the river, and the river's already gone over the cliff. And we've passed these tipping points. So in order to save ourselves, we have to take immediate action. Paul Beckwith says we have to declare a climate emergency for the world. And so if we do that and we'd say there's no money, then we don't have to worry about finances or fixing anything. We don't have to worry about any financial aspect. We just start taking these machines and these ideas and we implement them and we put them into work now, and we use mankind's efficiency. If you get money out of the way, mankind has a great deal of intelligence and capability, imagination. That's what separates us from all the other animals in the world. That's what gives us our spirits. We have this ability, but every single time, money trumps it. It's a disease. It's a poison. And the greed, there's no such, greed is just a byproduct. People can't help but be greedy. People can't help but want money.
But people, the problem is that the only story that people have that currently runs their life is this story. The story of capitalism, the story of I must earn, I must survive. And this capitalist, this system, whatever bad things you want to say about it, has allowed for there to be a food production system that would feed 7 billion people on this small, finite, round planet. And, if you talk about eliminating money, you're going to have to talk about distributing resources to people, which maybe you're still talking about values, and you're still talking about amounts of resources and food and fuel that need to be distributed to different people. And before we had a story that went along with that helped us distribute these resources, and it was money. And it may be corrupt and it may be frustrating and make you angry, but at the same time, if you completely remove the story of money, I mean, I think people will go insane. I mean, like, people are going to want gas at the gas pumps. They're going to be standing at the gas pumps like, where's the fucking gas? And they're going to be at the shopping market like, where's the food? And what is someone like you going to tell them, oh, well, we decided we need the food for these people over here so that they can refreeze the Arctic, and we need this fuel so they can build this thing so they can refreeze the Arctic. And these people are like, this is fucking insane. I didn't know that the Arctic needed to be refrozen.
Right.
I don't know. I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here, but like you
asked me,
and at some point resources have to be distributed. At some point, to fix this problem, we're probably going to have to use oil and cars and things that already exist, boats with engines that, you know, take fossil fuel to solve this problem. And people are going to point their fingers and be like, well, you're still using oil machinery to do this. But it's the only option we have. If you want to act now, we need to take freaking, you know, we need to do things that, you know, people are going to have to be, these people's efforts are more important than those people's efforts. I.e., think about it this way. Refreezing the Arctic is more important than this asshole driving his Bentley so he can go and trade stocks at Wall Street in New York City, and he thinks he's so important and he's got such a big ego and he's the driver of the economy because he makes all the money. But we're going to have to tell this asshole, no, fuck you, excuse my language, but you don't get any oil or money or anything anymore because you're not doing something of productive value. We have to go refreeze the Arctic. And this guy's going to, you know, call his buddy Trump on the phone and be like, Trump, these assholes, you know. I'm just saying, like, when you start talking about eliminating money, you open up a can of fucking worms. And
Jason, what it is what you said previously. It's not that we can eliminate money. That's true. But who gets to make the money and what's it spent on? What we need ASAP in this climate emergency is another Manhattan Project. And if we looked at the Manhattan Project, that's exactly what happened. World War II, they've completely converted every plant that was making automobiles into making tanks, every plant that was making washing machines or refrigerators, converted them into the war effort. And then this Manhattan Project, which was a big secret project on top of it, they spent billions of dollars very quickly in a matter of 2 years to create all this experimental infrastructure all around the United States to create the first bomb.
By the way, they did that they did that for greed in a large way. They wanted to be the first ones to have the most powerful weapon of all time, the nuclear weapon.
Right. Yeah. So now we have to do it for the planet. Yeah.
Right. So I get it, but I think also people like Jamie, Michael, Jamin, if you're talking about going around the system, you're really talking about, I guess, you know, you need money in a way, but I guess.
Josh, may I interject something just right there, and then
love to
continue on. Yeah, I think the model we've been employing has been one of changing the system within the system more than getting around the system. You know, money as a medium of exchange, including cryptocurrency, and it just is blood that flows through the body. You know, the body being something that's larger than the money itself, right? It's a system, and it's within that system that we live, that's given us this technology and so on and so forth, along with the problems, right? So, I think we're working within the premise that to change the system, you really have to not play by the system rules, right? Play within them, but to play with them, if that makes sense.
All right. Speaking of playing with stuff, I just wanted to comment that it is 12 minutes after 12 o'clock here Pacific time. The first four of us who got on have been on for about 2 hours now, a little over 2 hours. So what I'd like to just suggest is maybe we take a break for a few minutes. It's actually quite an accomplishment to get us all assembled here. And I actually want to recognize and welcome our friend Ace Otana from England, who just joined us a few minutes ago. I see your microphone's muted. So if you're there, Ace, feel free to jump in and say hello. And after that happens, I propose we take a break. Could be for 5 minutes, could be for 10. I just want to put it out there. This is kind of part of the process of figuring out this new operating system, taking breaks and whatnot. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. Ace, if you can hear me, feel free to jump in, and otherwise, gentlemen, feel free to voice your opinion on taking a break versus, we could just keep it rolling and everyone takes a break when they feel like it, but I think it might make more sense to just take one big organized break. Going on mute.
Are we going to go offline then when we go on break? Because I'd like to get some email addresses if possible.
Oh yeah, no, we wouldn't go offline just yet. We're continuously broadcasting and recording right now.
Yes, I've enjoyed the conversation so far.
Oh, go ahead, Ace. Welcome, Ace.
Go ahead, Ace.
Go ahead, Ace. We hear you. We hear you, buddy. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, great, Ace. Great. How are you?
Oh, good. I've enjoyed the conversation so far and loved it. All the information coming in. I'm good.
Wonderful. Well,
brilliant.
Welcome to the
Wonderful.
Club at the End of the World, and welcome to Radical Collective Intelligence. And I just want everyone to know, Ace is a gentleman from England who has made brilliant comments on various videos over the months. And I always tell him, Ace, come on, join. And so we did a test run a few days ago, and I'm just very happy that Ace has joined us today. Anyway, thank you, Ace. Anyone else have any thoughts about taking a break? I would just mute my camera, mute my microphone, and go to the bathroom basically, and then come back. That's what
I'm in favor. What time frame are we looking at? 10, 15? What do you guys think?
I propose 10 minutes.
Okay.
10? Jamie, you're trying to say something. Is that? I see 5.
10 works for me.
5 is 10. Okay.
Sure, 10.
Okay, good. All right. So why don't we? Of course, y'all can keep talking if people want to stick around, but officially we'll reconvene in at 25 minutes after the hour, and unless you're watching in India, in which case it'd be 55 minutes after the hour. But anyway, 25 minutes after the hour we'll reconvene, and but again, feel free to keep talking if you want. We're not like pausing anything or stopping anything. I'm just going to mute my microphone and camera and be back in 10 minutes. See y'all back in 10. Thank you.
Well, anyways, see you guys around back in 10. Maybe I'll just talk. I'll just get on my soapbox and talk the whole time while you guys are gone. Oh my gosh.
How do you, Jamin? So you're back. I'm back. I guess before we start back up again, I know we're recording, but whatever. Are we meeting with Michael? Oh, you're muted, Jamin.
Hey, Michael. Sorry, I've got Jamie on the phone here on.
Oh, I didn't see that. Yeah, go ahead.
That's all right. That's right.
Yeah, we'll talk later.
No, it's okay. So we're still broadcasting. We're still recording. It's just Jamie is having trouble connecting, so he just made a point that he's asking me to relay, which I'll do right now. Jamie's still on the phone here, but I'll actually wait till other folks tune back in. Oftentimes when you say a 10-minute break, some people are gone for 15. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, but we'll give it a couple of minutes anyway. But in the meantime, Michael, you were saying I couldn't actually hear what you were.
Let's hear what Jamie has to say.
Okay, Jamie, I'm going to say it for you because if you try to say it through the speakerphone, it won't be heard too well. But feel free to connect. When you were connected, Jamie, it was working great. Okay. So it's your call. Do you want me to reiterate or do you want to reconnect?
Go ahead and reiterate.
Okay. What Jamie said was that, in terms of coming up with some new form or new system to do away with money completely and find some workaround, what Jamie is suggesting is there's a very successful model in the United States developed and implemented by the Amish community in the United States, which basically replaces money as the goal with God as the goal. Or instead of having an economy and a society and a life driven by money, it's driven by God. And what Jamie is suggesting is we could leverage our knowledge and understanding of that model to create a new model where instead of the goal being money, the goal is Mother Earth, wholeness and wellness for Mother Earth. And also a system where, similar to the Amish, everyone is taken care of. And in fact, with that in mind, I'm just going to do a really quick screen share to show something that Michael and I came up with almost 4 years ago, about 3.5 years ago. And that is what I'm showing on the screen right now, which is a system where we still use money, but we've got a whole new standard for compassionate companies. And the big vision, the big utopian idea is that as this standard takes hold, consumers will, and businesses will, and any organization will replace their purchasing of products and services purchased from companies that hoard and distribute profits to the very wealthy, perpetuating the problem. Instead, they give their business to CCC companies, which donate 100% of their profits initially to eradicating hunger. But then once we eradicate hunger, then those profits can be redirected elsewhere, like refreezing the Arctic, for example. And that the companies, in addition to directing all their profits to these benevolent aims, are also socially transformational in everything they do and ecologically regenerative. So like funding the end of hunger would mean funding institutions such as the Community Cafe, which we've pioneered in California and are soon to be expanding to the state of Washington, where we feed everyone nutritious foods, holistically grown for free, funded by compassionate companies. And so the virtuous cycle that will ensue, we call the Hungerless Games. All profits go to ending hunger. That creates a huge story, a beautiful story and global movement, which gets even more people to buy CCC, and it's a virtuous cycle. And kicking it off, you've got Sato Hemp, hemp fashion house of Japan, which Michael and I and others from Radish have visited over in Japan, and they've made several trips out here, where it's hemp clothing. Hemp is healing to the planet, sequesters more carbon per acre than any other crop, uses a fraction of the water that cotton uses, doesn't use any pesticides or chemicals, whereas cotton is the big offender in that realm. Anyway, this is just an example of how we might actually transform the economy, still working within the current money system, but with a whole different objective. So there's lots of ways to work within the system and yet transform it at the same time. I'm going to go on mute And Jamie, if you talk, people will probably be able to hear you, but just not super clear because you're on speakerphone on my cell phone communicating to my computer. So if you can somehow reconnect, that'd be better. But it's up to you, Jamie.
All right, I'm gonna try to finish my thought. Then I'm gonna be parking for a minute. I'm gonna try to reconnect.
Okay, great.
So the Amish community concept is something that we should take a look at. I'm very familiar with them. I've lived among them for 30 years. They've replaced their greed with the greed to get to heaven. And if we can emulate that model and get those like-minded people to turn off their greed drive and their save the earth drive and bring everybody along, that's something we can think about to talk about. Just I'm throwing it out there. And my career path was in government my whole life. I worked with police canines and still do. And money is not a drive. It is we have drives as mammals, and our species, humans, we've actually replaced our drive for survival, food, shelter, breeding, with our drive for things. And we've allowed monetization to switch our drives. And that's why we find ourselves in the boat we're in. The drive for money and wealth and things isn't a drive, but we act as if it is. And that's where one of our problems comes in. Okay, I'm parking. I got to get gas. I'll jump back on when I can.
Look forward to it, Jamie. Thanks so much, brother.
Well, I know that before we broke, we had Ace chiming in there, introducing himself, and Jason was in the middle of saying something, and I actually cut him off. So I don't know if you remember that thread, Jason, but feel free to continue with it. And I think there's some interesting connections there with what you were saying and with what Jamie is saying there now, as that sort of being, a possible, it's more than a possibility, right? It's something that exists in the real world that you can look at. And there's been other communities like that before. There's been a number of them. And I believe that's been a manifestation historically of the utopian impulse that is, largely repressed, but manifests itself in so many ways in our lives. And then you have these anomalies like the Amish, right? That in a sense really embrace it and kind of bring it out into the open. And in a sense, like Jamin was showing us there with the certified compassionate companies and all of that, there's a telos, a goal that's driving everything we're doing, at Radish and with community cafes and everything else we're doing. That is essentially what we've all convened to talk about here today, right? How to achieve a whole world, right? That becomes I don't want to say the replacement for God or for money or anything like that, but that becomes the aim, the goal that unites us. That brings us together rather than divides us. And so I think we have a model here that to a certain extent does just that, because clearly in the Radish verse, or whatever we want to call it, the whole world as a telos is that aim or goal around which we revolve.
Right. I just want to interject real brief, and then I'd love to hear from others, is that the combination of that telos, that aim of a whole world, combined with the operating system that imbues us with massively higher form of intelligence than anything we've experienced so far, that is it. That's That's the holy grail that I believe we're looking for. And that will really create this complete operating system to reorient our activities. Welcome back, Jamie. We were just riffing off what you were saying. What on you?
Hey, Jamin, can I ask you a question? Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Adam. Mm-hmm.
Well, if how? Let me get back to you in a minute.
Sure. No problem. Mm-hmm.
So, the conversation that Michael was sort of talking about was just stemming off of the money conversation, and that money is more of a communication network. And we were talking about, people set the rules that make money function the way it does, and it could theoretically function in an entirely different way, or the idea of like a counter currency, which, we've brought up here. Multiple people have brought it up in different ideas and ways. I like how Jamie sort of thinks about the Irish and trying to turn the greed to get to heaven into this greed to save the earth. Maybe sort of think that maybe making like a prize that's sort of like the Nobel Peace Prize, making a real prize. It's like the prize to save the world. It's like the ultimate thing that people should like look to gain.
Yeah, it was the Amish, but you're on a roll. Go for it, Jason.
Oh, what did I say?
You said the Irish, and that's because you're
Irish because it's St. Patty's Day, probably. All right.
That's it.
Anyway, so I don't know, but everybody keeps using the word intelligence, like human intelligence is going to save this or that. And I think it's funny, it's not funny, but Stephen Hawking just died, and he may have released his final paper that might have won him the Nobel Peace Prize or the, whatever he was looking for his whole life. And it was really mathematical equations that would be able to be measured by some sort of spacecraft or spaceship that would prove that the multiverse theory was in fact real. That being opposed to the Big Bang theory being the only thing, like there was only one Big Bang, and that is the entire universe that exists. Now, I know this is not what we're talking about, but I'm just saying that, it's an interesting thing that he came up with this idea that the multiverse makes more sense to me, personally, than just the Big Bang, everything fizzles out, blah, blah, blah. But one of his quotes was, intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And I think that this, will be a test of whether humanity is really intelligent or not, whether we can come together and work together to adapt to this change that is coming. That, we kind of say we want to save the world and create an atmosphere to sort of save like the stable climate so that life can continue going on. That challenge will definitely tell whether we're intelligent or not. But that was just sort of something that came up in my mind as we were talking. How to figure out how to shift people's mindset towards greed or just wanting to get money or just survive on a regular basis, to actually putting energy into this bigger picture of Mother Earth and a union with everyone and a union with all life. That's a totally different question that maybe some other people have some great input for. And I think is something that will evolve over time, but that I don't necessarily have the answers for. But I think that's what I was getting at as we left on our break.
Hey, Jamin, I have to go pretty quick here, but do you have an email list or something that I could get on? And
oh yeah. In fact, I emailed I believe all of you without exception. Let me verify that. And so if everyone let's see. Yeah, I think I emailed. Yeah, I emailed everyone for today's Hangout. If everyone gives a thumbs up, I will share all of our emails with each other, not with the world, mind you, but with each other. So thumbs up from Jamie.
Thumbs up from Michael.
Jason, Adam. Yep. Okay. Any other thumbs ups? Thumbs up from. Okay, so we got thumbs ups from just about everyone. I'm thumbs up. Okay. So so everyone who put their thumbs up or articulated the same will be on an email that I'll send to everyone, so we can all be connected. And some really cool email dialogue has been emerging between some of us, and so this will broaden that. And that's a really nice compliment to these big kumbaya hangouts. So thank you for raising that, Adam. Great idea. We'll definitely do that.
But I have to say goodbye. So thank you. It's been very good.
Great seeing you, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
We'll look forward to seeing you.
Bye, Adam.
Mm-hmm. See you soon.
Jamin, if I could jump in here.
Please.
One of the things that occurred to me, sorry I didn't think of this earlier, but there's a lot of people watching that we don't realize unless you have two devices going. So I'd just like to do a shout out to Richard Beaumont. He said, glad to see people starting to realize what a phony GM is. It took me about 2 views of his videos. I'm not sure who they're talking about there, but anyway, Bill McFarland's on, Supremo BR, Wills, some other people, Virginia Woolf, Jeff Green, Cindy, Teresa, Greg, Richard, Henry, Alaric, Valhalla 56, David. Anyway, goes on. So just maybe in the future, sometime we might be able to spend a bit of time with these people that are watching our YouTube, the YouTube version of this.
I would love to. In fact, I'll just repeat for the record, this video, anyone can join this who can find the link. Well, how do you find the link? Either A, go to my Facebook page. It's my most recent post. B, go to my Google Plus page. Or C, if you can't find either of those, on this very same YouTube channel, there's a 4-minute video called Instructions on How to Join Hangouts. And I always post the updated, whatever, like I posted this link there, both in the description and the comments. So I'm posting it everywhere I know. And we're soon about to get set up so that we post these up on radish.org. We'll make it obvious from the homepage where to go to find them. And in fact, one of the whole points of Radish is that it become this general bulletin board. So let's say there's 100 conversations going on in parallel within the context of radical collective intelligence. There would be 100 links with 100 titles saying, look, these are the 100 conversations that are ongoing. You can either watch them or those that are open for anyone to jump in, like this one. Click on the link and jump in, right? So I hope that answers that question. And how exciting! So there's a lot of folks who just kind of watch at first, and that's totally cool. We certainly don't want to pressure or in any way pressure people to join, but other than the pressure of life on Earth is gradually and acceleratingly being extinguished. So if we're going to do anything about it, now is the time. So instead of call this 800 number on your screen and have your credit card ready, the message is join the radical collective intelligence. Doesn't cost a penny, never will. We want you, not your money. We want you and your ideas and your heart and your spirit. And the very best that each of us has to offer. And look at the magic that's happening on this hangout. We've had 7 super cool people jumping in, building off of each other's ideas, challenging each other with new ideas. This is radical collective intelligence. It's happening right here, right now. So a round of high fives all around. High five Ace, high five Jamie, high five Jason, high five Michael, high five Miles, high five Adam. We are making it happen right here, right now. And of course, I want nothing more than to just expand this. So instead of, 7 or 8 of us at a time on a hangout, we've got 1,000 of us spanning hundreds of different, topics and video conferences on those topics at all times. Go on mute.
I'll jump in and just talk to something I came across recently. Really appreciative of a podcast and website called Project Censored. Not sure if you've heard of Project Censored. Mickey Huff, I think, is the professor down there at one of the universities in California. Anyway, most recently, he had a discussion going, and it's titled essentially Post-Truth World, Reviving the Propaganda Model for News for our Digital Age. If you go to Project Censored and go to the interview that he had with a professor of media studies, there's a report that is free for download, and it essentially provides really succinct instructions on how to sift through what is truth and what is false. And I think that's something that needs to be a foundational value of ours, is that, like, for example, I've put forward some references today, and to my knowledge, they're credible resources, but nevertheless, we need to question everything, think critically, establish, what is fake news. He presents a simple taxonomy for how to decipher that. Other subtitles are propaganda model of the news, analyzing the U.S. news industry in the analog age. Essentially that we have to be aware that mainstream media actually, again, these multi-transnational corporations, which are really have tentacles into so much of what transpires in what Dwight D. Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex. We have to be aware of basically psychological operations that we're going to be subjected to as we try to decipher, what is truth and how we respond.
Yep, absolutely. And, the collective intelligence can refine these models, build off these models and systems to help us decipher the truth. And then with our own, wikis and other structures and systems. Just look right now. I just want to point out an interesting fact. We've got people dialing in from no fewer than 4 countries today: the United States, Canada, France, and England. That's really cool, right? So right out the gate, you've got perspectives from multiple different countries. Can you imagine a few months down the road, or a few weeks down the road, when we've got hundreds of people participating, right? And it's really up to us to make that jump from a few dozen to a few hundred. And I think when we get to a few hundred, we really will have a beautiful critical mass, and we'll be able to, anyway, we'll just have so much rich perspective. And perspective is intelligence. Anyway, going on mute.
Yeah, we're priming the pump here, right? We're kind of like getting the lawnmower going, just yanking away, right? That's kind of what we're doing here. In a way, it can seem quite inconsequential, even though we're talking about some very consequential stuff. But the fact that we have so many, intelligent individuals here, that's precisely what's going to propel collective intelligence forward. This is just a platform, right? It's not the intelligence itself.
Exactly. And this is coming from Michael, one of the main architects of radical collective intelligence. Michael actually came up with the name Radish. And, you know, going back 3.5 years ago, it was, at that time, it was just me and Michael basically kicking this around. You know, we'd go on, retreats off to Port Townsend and other cool places here in the state of Washington and California sometimes. But you see how, just starting with, in this case, 2 people. And now we've got a whole technical team in the United States, a team in India, building Radish, and this whole community. So it is happening, right? For those who are just joining or just watching or whatever, they might think, yeah, whatever, half a dozen people on a video conference, what's the big deal? But in exponential terms, we are fast approaching the knee of the exponential, rounding the knee. It effectively goes vertical. So rock on, everybody. We're making it happen right here, right now.
Something I just would like to add into the mix is thinking about how there are so many meetings held. People come together even at church or their temple or synagogue. And at some point in time, we might be connecting to these assemblies as part of their service. Maybe we would say to them, could you stay half an hour longer, your congregation, and participate in this radical collective intelligence and contribute your ideas and be part of assembling resources and manpower. So, and with that, I just needed to also add that I have to bow out because I'm actually going to a meeting of what's called the Metro Alliance for the Common Good here in Calgary. And I don't represent any organization, but they welcome my attendance. And what they're working on is an Indigenous gathering place for Calgary. So the idea is we have all sorts of churches, synagogues, temples, and such. But indeed, the first people of Canada, the First Nations, there's no such facility here in Calgary. So anyway, at some point in time, this organization and what I'm working on would feed into this as part of another group and with more ideas and a different perspective. So with that, I'm just going to say goodbye and thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. I'm going to comment on that, Miles, but don't let me keep you. I know you got to get to your appointment, but building off of what Miles just said, Miles, feel free to bring your laptop to that meeting and we can schedule a time where you just whip it out, get connected. And if there's a dozen of you that want to stay after the formal meeting and participate in the Radical Collective Intelligence, do it. Let's do it. Let's just schedule it and do it. I'm totally game.
Yeah. And another venue is the system of libraries we have here. They're a very progressive thinking library here in Calgary. And they say, yeah, if you got 2 or 3 people, we'll give you a room for free. Some of these rooms, there's one room, it's called the Idea Lab, which is in the downtown library. And it's equipped with smart board, audio visual cameras and such, so yeah, it's just like sitting there. And for anybody to get a little group together and say, yeah, we're here for Radish. So
I love it. Let's get a network of libraries connected like that, right?
No,
okay,
brilliant, guys. Brilliant. Gotta run. Thanks.
All right. Thanks so much, Miles.
Bye.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Well, should we wrap, or what do you think, Jamin? Anybody have anything to say? Because we can. I'm available.
Yeah, I'm available too. I'm just kind of going on mute to give other people a chance to talk, since I feel like I've talked a lot.
Well, we could wrap, but I'm all ears.
I maybe should take this opportunity to ask you a bunch of questions, which I don't necessarily have right now because I need to go and feed myself. Survival is actually real. You have to actually feed yourself once in a while. Food, products. But I look forward to the launch of Radical Collective Intelligence and, talking.
Well, you're a part of it, Jason. You can't escape it.
I can't escape it now. Yeah, I mean, I guess
we're plugged into your neurons.
To a degree, sometimes I wonder though, like, getting a bunch of people on here, it needs to really stay solution focused and trying to get people to break off into solution segments or solution groups, because I could see it rapidly declining into people using it as a bitch zone to get together and start bitching about everything that's going on, which I feel like when someone says something earlier was said about like marches don't do anything. That's the exact reason why I decided I had to take different type of action. And now you never see me at a march where I used to maybe do something. And I feel like people get jaded because they go through their activist era and it may be short-lived or it may be their whole life. But what they may find is that, I held a sign all this time and I tried to wake people up, but it didn't really gain any traction. And we are at a point where we can't afford to not gain traction in a way. Like we are all people who want to see some sort of action be actually taken to stabilize the climate. And that's easier said than done. Like, it's really easy to sort of say, hey, we came up with a solution, and the solution is radical collective intelligence. We all get together online. We chat about what's going to go on. And I mean, that can happen. And I feel like it could definitely bring out some solutions. But it also could just stay in the never really implementation of action. And so the main characters on board, i.e. Michael, Jamin, maybe myself, really need to make sure that the people stay focused on the implementation of action, of things that can actually do something. Not of wishy-washy bullshit, but like, we got to do things to really take action. I think, and there's area for tons of people to do that, right? Like somebody could maybe be into marketing, and maybe your new job now isn't marketing this solution to the broader public. Your job should be marketing the idea that we need a solution to the people who can actually make an impact. Sort of like I've said, like reshaping the ideas, reshaping thought patterns, reshaping culture, reshaping action altogether. There's a lot of people who maybe say, oh, we've been doing what you've been doing in Radical Collective Intelligence for years at Greenpeace and at whatever these other organizations may be called. But really creating something new that takes action in a new way, that implements change and implements solutions in a new way. And I know we're yet to really get to the point where we're like, we've got it, we've got it down. This is what we need to do. But I mean, so I guess I maybe just sound like I'm babbling on at this point, but I can tell Jamie maybe had something to say.
Yeah, let me throw you a life preserver, Jason. So definitely actions need to happen, no question. But before actions happen, we need to have plans, including solutions, developed, right? And before those can emerge, we need to have conversations. structured, organized conversations, as you were just talking about a few minutes ago. You know, we need to have, you know, let's say a whole series on refreezing the Arctic, another series on cleaning up the oceans, another series on, you know, perfecting the platform for radical collective intelligence, et cetera. So we need to have those conversations to happen. And prior to that, drum roll, this conversation needed to happen. We needed to have a general social club at the end of the world for people to get together, see each other, find each other, see that this is for real, and then say, okay, great. You know, this is kind of like the general assembly at a big conference where everyone's there at the big auditorium for like the kickoff. Everyone gets on the same page with whatever they need to get on the same page about for that particular conference, and then they go to breakout rooms, right? So the breakout rooms for us are going to be those parallel focused conversations and series of conversations on these crucial topics like refreezing the Arctic, right? And so many other topics.
Sure, but sometimes even when we're in these small conversations, you talk about trying to reach consensus on should we go to videotape? You know, and if we can't reach consensus, then obviously somebody in the group needs to be convinced. So a concern could be raised that coming to consensus through conversations to create a plan and solutions that can be implemented could take decades.
Right. But you see, that's where we actually don't need consensus in order to come up with a solution. We just need, you know, because look, not everyone has to agree. If I say, hey, blah, 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 here's the best materials to use to refreeze the Arctic, you know, 10 people could say, I disagree, I disagree, I disagree. So what? You know, it's out there, right? The information is out there that other people can then build upon and act upon. So we don't need to build consensus for every little thing.
Right.
It's nice. Go ahead.
I mean, if someone's going to fund it or you're going to have a group of people who are going to build it, there has to be a consensus between them that they're even taking the right action to begin with.
Of course, of course. Of course.
So yeah, consensus will be definitely needed. Consensus among the entire population, you're right, we're never going to get that. It's not like our so-called democratic system looks for actual consensus in any way because it's total bullshit. It's not even a democracy. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm excited for it. I'd love to even go out and talk about it and say, hey, I'm part of this conversation that's going on online called Radical Collective Intelligence. I suggest you hop on and pick a section that you feel like your skill set can implement. And I think that's something we've yet to talk about as well, is how do people from here really go out and talk about it? And I guess maybe once it's up and running, and maybe some of us do our own breakout sessions and try to narrow down on a subject on what should we do with urban agriculture, right? You know, like until and someone's got to break that off, I guess, and kind of break it out and try to get people involved. And I think that process too could go really terribly because someone doesn't try to reach out. And I think, you know, if I try to create my own section that's urban agriculture and how do we, you know, whatever, blah, blah, blah. How do you know, then theoretically I should probably go out there and try to reach out to a bunch of different groups of people and say, hey, we're trying to create a group of people who are trying to come up with solutions to abrupt climate change or climate change. And we'd have to be pulling people in at that point to get people interested in the conversation, which then rolls them into, well, why? Why should we be so concerned? To which then I guess we're just pointing at Guy McPherson and other people who say that we maybe don't have much time left until abrupt climate change kills us all. I'm just trying to think how it rolls out. Like if you want to have a thought process on that.
Yeah. We've given it a lot of thought. The short answer is organically, right? People will join whatever conversations they want to join. People will promote to the outside world whatever conversations they want to promote. And you know, whatever question that arises, like what's the best way to do this or what's the best way to do that, that'll be answered by the collective intelligence in conversation, right? And so, you know, people who aren't necessarily convinced that there is a problem, you know, we don't necessarily want them, you know, just, you know, throwing rotten vegetables at the process of a bunch of people working on how to refreeze the Arctic. So, you know, there will be some natural kind of segregation of people, you know, those who want to debate whether abrupt climate change is real or a Chinese hoax, you know, go to the, you know, the Chinese hoax discussion room and have at it. Right.
Well, I mean, I view in that situation that some of the conversations further down the line are going to have to be closed.
Oh, absolutely. No. And, you know, see, for these general conversations to, you know, to invite people in so they can start to experience the magic of radical collective intelligence, we choose that anyone can join. But many conversations will be closed. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, you know, I mean, if 4 busy engineers need to get together and root down and solve some problem, and they've only got an hour to do it, then, you know, you certainly don't want, you know, a bunch of, you know, Riley teenagers in there throwing rotten tomatoes saying, oh, this is stupid. No. So, of course, many conversations are going to be closed. Absolutely. Maybe even most.
All right. Well, I don't know. I think for now I'm going to go because I am hungry and I need to eat something.
Hey, man, don't let me stop you. And great to see you, Jason. Thanks so much for joining. All right. See you next time. All righty. Ace, haven't heard from you in a little bit. You're welcome to jump in if you're there available. Love to hear from you. Again, Ace has made some brilliant comments to previous videos. We've had some lengthy back and forth, and I'm like, dude, join us. So very happy to be that you've joined us today.
Well, that was a wonderful session, just because of the passion, the shared passion, right? I mean, for getting something done, but then also just the passion of you know, the various contradictions, right? The possibilities, the impossibilities, the problems, you know, I think it's, but at the same time, I think done in a way that was very productive. And I think that's, you know, you got to start somewhere. And here we are just, you know, talking about, well, what are we up against? What do we have to work with? You know, what is possible? Right? How much time do we have? All those kinds of questions enter into the equation, and so those are getting brought to the fore.
Totally. I just got a message from Ace that apparently is a substantial time lag, so I'm going to request a minute of silence so we can give Ace a chance to weigh in if you so desire, Ace. But great points, Michael. So let's leave some silence for Ace to jump in, if and when ready. Ace, I see you've unmuted, so I'm just giving you space to talk. Okay. Nothing to add at the moment from Ace. That's totally fair. Well, one of the points I want to make is we never put anyone on the spot on these public recorded broadcast hangouts. We want to create these as a very, very safe space for safe, respectful dialogue. I apologize for the F-bombs and the S-bombs that have been dropped here and there. We really want to get rid of those and just make it the most family-friendly, respectful mode of communication we possibly can. All right, going on mute.
Well, I personally don't have anything on more that I want to talk about. I mean, the number of possibilities that were brought up to me was you know, so thought provoking. All the different dilemmas, right? That it just shows at how rich this taxonomy can become. Taxonomy topics. We can go, and will go in all of those different directions.
To boldly go where humanity has not gone before, we will explore the far reaches of the universe of possibilities for how to save as much life on Earth as possible, as much diversity of life on Earth as possible, and to transform life itself from this barbaric game of hoarding and planetary destruction in service of hoarding and ego to a utopia. That's the big game as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, even for people who don't believe we have enough time or enough whatever, fill in the blank to accomplish anything meaningful, let's at least try. I mean, what else are we going to do other than try? So come one, come all, join us, keep joining us, keep showing up, and we'd love to have you. So with that, I'll give you gentlemen the last words. Going on mute.
I'll only add that you know, if you're out there, if you're watching, you know, now in real time or the recorded, you know, post, please feel free to join us, whether or not, you know, you want to talk or show your face or whatever. That's an open invitation, and you know, there is strength in numbers, and so and every point of view, every point of view, I would say, is valid, because you know, it's coming from this or that perspective. I'm not saying everything that somebody says is valid. I'm just saying that, you know, the point of view, you're coming from a certain angle, you have something to say, and that may be of great interest to, you know, any number of other people who are trying to articulate the same thing or have the courage to pose the same problem or whatever. So love to have you.
Very well said, Michael. Totally agree. All righty. Well, we've been recording and broadcasting for about 2 hours and 45 minutes. I've been on for a little over 3 hours. So, but it just shows how awesome these hangouts are. Anyway, I look forward to the next one. We'll continue to post as I've discussed earlier, so that anyone can join. And soon we'll have the platform launched so that anyone can create their own conversations and post them, post invitations for others to join on Radish, so that you'll have a lot of options. Oh my goodness, there's conversations on these and these and these topics. Let's jump in. And in jumping in, you're participating in the creation of a new culture. We're creating a whole new culture that will ultimately, I believe, give way to a whole new modality of life here on planet Earth that will be much more like the bumblebees, much more cooperative, symbiotic, and loving and caring and compassionate, and ultimately utopian. So, highway to utopia. Join the caravan. Going on mute. Asotana just commented, all I have to say is whatever idea there is, never forget the ticking of the clock. Time is short. Extremely good point. Couldn't agree more. And, you know, that's really why we're just jumping in and doing this, and really encouraging everyone to jump in and do it along with us. Whatever we're going to do, we've got to do it now. We don't have time to wait. We don't have time to go to the library and read a bunch of books and go on vacation and then come back and, oh, I'll join that next year. There may not be a next year. If we're going to do anything, let's do it now. Great point.
The sense of urgency comes from reality itself, right? It's not that we're, you know, necessarily apocalyptic, you know, doomsayers, but there is a time crunch.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's do it. So we'll see you all next time. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to stop broadcasting here in a moment, and then, you know, we can talk offline if we choose. So please don't hang up if you don't want to, and I'll just stop recording now. Once again, big thanks to all of our participants and everyone watching in real time and everyone watching the recording. Thank you all. You make collective intelligence possible. Thank you.
Thank you.